Sharon's title beside me. I wouldn't take a risk on that. So it's Director of Service, Economic Enterprise and Tourism Development, Cork County Council. So thanks a million,
Thanks
Sharon.
very much. Not at all. Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Okay, because the only screen I can see is you. I can't see anybody else, but I presume, is that the way it should be?
Well, that's the same for me too, yeah. I've just switched screens. I don't know whether you can see.
I can see you now, but that's all. I can only see whoever's talking, I think. But I can't see anybody.
If you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen,
yeah,
is there a thing there if you hover the mouse over that says view?
No, I'm actually doing it from my iPad, so maybe that's why.
Perfect. Okay.
But
so it's like, so just we can hear you perfectly, and every time you speak. So when you're giving your exactly.
Okay, that's fine.
So
okay, that's fine. I don't need anything else. Okay.
Yeah. No, absolutely brilliant. So everyone's looking absolutely radiant, and I just want to wish everyone. I wouldn't say the best of luck, because that sounds like we need luck, but just to enjoy the next hour and a half, and I hope everything goes really, really well for everyone. As I said just at the beginning, in case anyone didn't hear, just a little tactic is when we're not speaking. So after we've done our opening address or our interview with Christine, the little tip is to mute your mic. Okay. So because we kind of forget that, and then someone walks into the room and we're watching it, and we start shouting at them, and we forget suddenly that it's flicking over to us, and now everyone's listening to our argument. So very, very simple thing, just to make sure that until we speak, we stay on mute, and after we've spoken, go on mute, and that's the only thing. Again, just so you know, if you've got somewhere to be and you're in a rush, you can leave the meeting after your piece, or you can certainly sit back, turn off your camera if you want, don't have to, and just enjoy the rest of the talk. The time is now coming up to bang on 10 o'clock, which is D-Day. Is everyone happy if we start the webinar? So what I'll do is I'm going to click the start webinar button now, and literally in 5 seconds we're going to be live. So it's going to be really over to Christine to introduce Sharon is going to be the first piece. Okay, are we happy?
Yep, great, thank you.
Okay, we're starting now.
Hello and very good morning to you all. Welcome to our International Women's Day event for 2021, as hosted by the Local Enterprise Office, Cork North and West. Thank you so much for joining us. This morning is for you. A few weeks ago, I suppose the question was asked whether there would be an appetite for an event today. I suppose over the last 12 months, we've all become maybe a bit weary of Zoom and all the meetings and everything that we've had to attend. So the question mark was put, would there be an interest in registration? Would we go ahead with it? And I suppose we're so delighted that we did. The event is booked out, proof that even in, I suppose, and even more so in these times, that it's important for us as women to connect with each other, to support each other, and to really feel, I guess, that we're not on our own. And today, that's what today is all about. So thank you so much for joining us. Huge thanks and praise to Joan Kelleher in North Cork and Christine Heffernan in West Cork for really driving today's event, pulling out all the stops and making sure that we could all join together today and celebrate this really important day. So thank you, all 100 of you, for joining us. And I suppose we have a busy schedule this morning. We'll kick it off soon with Holly Cairns TD, followed by a chat with 3 amazing local business women who'll chat candidly and openly, warts and all, about their paths to where they are today. And then we'll have videos along the way from local business women in Cork North and West with their life and business advice. But first this morning, I want to hand the screen over to Sharon Corcoran. Sharon is Director of Service, Economic Enterprise and Tourism Development with Cork County Council, and a great advocate for women. So you're very welcome, Sharon.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'd love to be able to say welcome to West Cork, because I think that's what I have been saying for the last 3 or 4 years since I've started opening these events. Unfortunately, we can't say that this morning, but nevertheless, the weather is beautiful. So the weather is always beautiful when I go to West Cork. So I think it's backing us this morning. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for inviting me, excuse me, again to open this. I'm just going to say a few words. This has been a really challenging year for everyone. And so I just thought about, what can be said to not just women in business, to people in business generally, but particularly to women in business this morning. And then I thought, you know what, women have been challenged, particularly women have been challenged for the last year, because women generally, their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, their friends, their granddaughters, there may be nieces. And as always, women usually take on the role of caring and nurturing. And this year has been particularly challenging for women, because not only have they taken on those roles, they're also trying to run their business. And they've been challenged with businesses being closed and trying to go online, maybe trying to find new markets, trying to find new ways of developing. So I think really women need to take it easy on themselves this year. And so rather than maybe giving any high aspirations or an ambitious speech about targets that women need to meet, I think in particular women need to say to themselves, on a day like today, we've survived. The last year has been really, really tough. Yes, our businesses have been challenged, but we've been challenged personally as well. But, we've got through it. There is light at the end of the tunnel, even though the whole vaccine rollout is slow. It is coming, and hopefully the world will get back to some sort of normality in the next 12 to 18 months. And meanwhile, I think the opportunity exists today for women just to reflect and say, we're here. We have cared for people, we have nurtured people, we've cared for our businesses, we've cared for each other, and that's what women do brilliantly. So I think, yes, I know the hashtag is Choose to Challenge, and I think women have been challenged on so many fronts this year. So I think just by being here this morning, women have shown that, look, they are survivors. And with that note, I think I'll just let the floor go back to you and wish all of you the very, very best of luck for this morning.
Thanks so much, Sharon. Thank you very much. Before I introduce Holly Cairns, I just want to say a couple of things about the Q&A buttons and the chat button underneath. So at the bottom, you will see there's a Q&A button. If you have any questions whatsoever for our panelists along the way this morning, please input your questions there and we'll pick up on it and ask the panelists as we go along. And beside it, you have your chat button. This is for if you want to put in your social media handles, your website addresses, if you want to offer any promo codes to encourage participants here today to maybe log on to the website and avail of maybe some discounts on your products. Today is really about supporting each other, supporting female-founded and female-led businesses. So please promote yourselves through the chat button, and everybody can go in there and see who's here as well this morning. So now, I'm delighted that we have Holly Cairns joining us here this morning. I suppose everyone will know Holly, and if you don't, I suppose you really should. Holly is the only out of 18 TDs in the whole of Cork City and County, the only in 2021 female TD, get that. So no pressure, Holly, when you stand up in the door to represent all of us women in Cork City and County. Nobody could accuse Holly of taking the easy route to things, that's for sure. Winning hard-fought battles in local and general elections, she's proof that when you put your mind to something and if you have good self-belief, that you can achieve what you want and you can make things happen. So Holly, you're very welcome. And I'll start with, I suppose, the question, what does International Women's Day mean to you, Holly?
I think first and foremost, and like Sharon kind of alluded to, on this particular year, I suppose it means something a bit different because it's been such a difficult year. Even just to take one example, there was a 35% increase in calls to the West Cork Women Against Domestic Violence Centre, a 26% increase in people needing refuge space in West Cork alone. Not to mention, the burden of care often falling on women, that I think there just needs to be some acknowledgement of, everybody getting through that. particularly difficult year for women. But on the whole, you know, I love International Women's Day. I think it's about celebrating, you know, sportswomen, female scientists, artists, parents, caregivers, everything. You know, I'm a huge fan of Women's Day. I think it's really important, and it's an opportunity to, you know, shine a light on the issues that we still face in relation to reaching real gender equality. And you know, we have a very far way to go in relation to that. And Christine, you mentioned that I'm the only female TD, unfortunately, in all of Cork City and County. And I suppose another way of looking at that, which is stark, is that there's 6 times more Michaels representing Cork than there is women. So variations of the name Michael, which is just astounding. So we know we have so far to go, and that's just in relation to politics. But I speak a lot about the importance of having more women in politics, because I really do think that, you know, so for example, I think one of the biggest barriers for women in every single sector is that we don't have, you know, state-funded childcare services in Ireland. It has to be the single biggest barrier. And I really don't think that that would be the case if we had more women at decision-making tables with uteruses, you know. So I think it's really important that we encourage more participation in politics, but I think that filters down into everything. And I also think when we talk about female participation, that it's so important to look at like what can be gained from this, and not, you know, equality being the most important thing. But I remember reading about a research project done in Leeds University where they looked at different boards in relation to financial institutions. And the results were astounding, and well, not surprising actually, I think, for most women, but having one female member on the board made the financial institutions significantly less likely to go broke. So when we consider that we don't have, you know, enough female CEOs, enough women in finance, enough women in, you know, the Department of Finance, for example, you know, ministers at tables, I think we'd all like to see things less likely to go broke, as one example. So yeah, I think International Women's Day is about celebrating first and foremost, and then highlight, you know, shining a light on the issues that we still need to do so much work on.
And why do you think, Holly, like, do you see a lethargy maybe amongst younger women, or what is the barrier? What is the main barrier you have seen or heard of for women maybe to get into politics?
I think there's a few different barriers, and there's some very, very obvious ones that should have been addressed a long time ago. So, for example, it's quite astonishing that there's no maternity provisions for councillors, senators, or TDs. So I think that's a really obvious barrier, one that should have been addressed a long time ago, because it sends out a kind of clear message that you either choose a career in politics or having a family, and that is not a positive message that we should be sending out in 2021. And actually, shout out to our Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, who I think is showing great leadership with regard to this. So she's the first minister at Cabinet to be pregnant, and she has said that she will be taking leave. And I just think that's fantastic, because what we often see is women in politics going, no, I promise I won't take any time off, and I'll do just as well as, you know, a man would do in this position. And we need that leadership, and fair play to our society needs to see this as an important, you know, part of life that, you know, women give birth. And you know, what I'd like to see is everybody taking leave when they start a family, men and women, and that's really a way of leveling the playing field. But in terms of other barriers, because it's not just simply down to maternity leave, there's the expression as well that, you know, you have to see it to be it. And when we look at Cork, and there's one female TD, and in the last stall there was one, Margaret Murphy-O'Mahony was the only female TD, and the first female TD to ever be elected in Cork Southwest. So shout out to Margaret as well. You know, that expression, you have to see it to be it. Like when I went to the Count Centre for this election, there was loads of young girls turning up, like asking their parents to bring them along because they wanted to meet me, and I didn't quite understand what that was about at the time. But they had seen like a younger woman on the posters and become so engaged. So we look at Irish politics and we see, you know, in reality, a lot of kind of middle-aged or older men in suits and not a lot of younger women. So this engagement from younger females was so amazing, and I get so many lectures all the time. But I think it's really important that we need to, you know, increase participation for more people to join, you know, to want to join the profession. That's a kind of obvious barrier. But unfortunately, and this isn't about bashing parties, not at all, it's just we're on the topic for Women's Day, that like, I think one of the biggest barriers in relation to female participation in politics is the biggest parties. So like these parties were founded around the time that the state was founded, you know, so we're talking 100-year-old institutions who have huge problems engaging women in politics, unfortunately. So we introduced a gender quota for the amount of female candidates on tickets, which is, it's controversial, but I'm a fan of quotas. They work and they help. But this quota has been really ineffective, because what it does is it says you need to have this many women on the ticket. So the bigger parties openly, I might add, said, well, here's our candidate that we want to get elected, and then we'll add some women to the ticket to sweep up votes for them, so we meet our gender quota. And I remember seeing during the election, and on the front page of the paper, a candidate saying, we're looking at these 2 female candidates because they tick the gender and geography boxes. Now, that is not acceptable. That is not a real attempt to engage women in politics. And like, at the end of the day, we have a society that's so unequal in relation to gender at this point, and it's 2021, the gender pay gap, the airplay for women on the radio, funding for women's sports, all of these things. And I think in reality, you can't endeavour to govern a society that promotes equality if it doesn't exist within your own political party. I think that's a big problem. And I've read figures about, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael collectively spending, 100,000 to try and engage women in politics, but it hasn't worked. And I don't understand, it's this kind of old, I think a lot of our institutions in Ireland, because we come from a, unfortunately, very misogynistic background since the foundation of the state, there's an institutionalization in a lot of these organizations, and that needs to be just uprooted and changed, because it's high time we had a more progressive, inclusive government. And I think that would filter down then into absolutely every sector.
Yeah, it's a culture change. And I guess your campaign, and I see you're wearing your badge, More Mana, and my junior infant little girl has gone off with her badges on her school bag, and she went in explaining More Mana to them in school yesterday. So it's not just about More Mana in politics, it's about, as you say, it's across the board, isn't it, Holly?
Absolutely. I mean, we look at sports. I think that, the women's Gaelic football ad,
yes,
that really does a job, doesn't it? So it helps us to really visualize the reality of what it's so often like for women in Ireland, that it's an uphill battle, all of the odds are stacked against you, and you're pushing for equality anyway. And it really just helps us to put ourselves in those women's football boots and visualize it and see it from another angle. And I think then we can see, yes, we need to level that playing field. And it's not about pitching men up against women, it's about, finding a more of a balance. And we see that, with regard to every sector. I mentioned airplay there. So there was research done in Ireland quite recently in terms of the top 20 artists played on Irish radio. And you're 5 times more than 5 times more likely to hear an Irish male artist than a female one. And even when these artists are holding their own on platforms like Spotify and iTunes, unfortunately we're not seeing it on Irish radio. So it's so ingrained and we don't even realise it. And in the UK, when research like this has come out, radio stations really address their bias and worked to change that. So we need our Irish radio stations.
As you say, it's not about wanting favoritism, it's just about equality. That's it.
Exactly. And like that, it just goes into almost every sector. Women in agriculture, women in music, women in sport, women in finance, the list goes on. So I think, we have a long way to go, but I do feel like the tide is turning, and it's gotten to a point where people are just really fed up with it, dealing with it every day. So I hope things will change.
I remember a couple of years ago at this event in the Celtic Ross, I think it was maybe 3 years ago, one of the speakers stood up and she gave out to women about this term of imposter syndrome. And she said, you all down there need to get over yourselves. She goes, I'm sick of women talking about imposter syndrome. She said, men don't talk about imposter syndrome. What do you think of that, Holly? And I suppose, how did you feel maybe the first day you stood up in the Dáil? What did it feel like? Were you nervous, or how do you overcome maybe that feeling of sometimes a little bit of intimidation? How do you deal with that, Holly?
Yeah, like I still get very nervous before doing lots of things, particularly any kind of TV stuff, media stuff. Going into the Dáil, I can't pretend that I'm, immune to anything like that. I get incredibly nervous, and it gets a little bit better with time. And certainly there is sometimes that feeling of imposter syndrome, and yeah, I think perhaps it is more frequent amongst women. But also one of the things that I've really learned through being in politics is that, like that, you are more likely to be, I think, disregarded, condescended, and patronized as a woman in a very male-dominated field, and that certainly happens all of the time. Most recently, being referred to as an ignorant little girl by, you know, a member of a state board, referring to an elected woman in that way. So it is quite common and is quite frequent and blatant. But also, I suppose, I think I have really learned to not be intimidated by these people, because in actual fact, when somebody's resorting to those kind of petty insults, they're on the back foot, they're defensive, and they have nothing left to say. And I think that was a really important realization for me, that, like, you know, whether it's a member of a state board, whether it's the Taoiseach, or, you know, a department official, they're actually just another person like any of us are. And it did take me some time to realize that and to not feel like an imposter, but, you know, that you're no more important than anybody else, and you're no less important than anybody else. We have to see it as a level playing field, and I think that does make a difference. But it is something that women will always come up against more. It's so ingrained, and like, just as an example of how ingrained it is, Christine, I'm a member of the Dáil Reform Committee, so we look at the rules essentially for the Dáil, the standing orders. This committee has existed for 100 years, consistently scrutinising the standing orders, seeing how the Parliament could be run better, more effectively, more democratically. And, you know, as a brand new member to this committee, I was reading the standing orders, obviously, and noticed that it said in them, chairman 137 times. It said chairperson twice, and chairwoman 0 times. So even down to that, there's no acknowledgement that, like, in 2021, that women sit on chairs, you know, and you know, so I have gotten that changed, and it will come to the Dáil next week to be approved. But, you know, even just down to that, that it is so ingrained that we have a job of work to do, and we need real acknowledgement of that first as well. Because you often hear people going, oh, come on, it's, you know, you can get in there on merit, you can, you know, it's always the best person. And I think we all know that there's no way that men are better at politics, better at music, better at absolutely everything. That's not the reality. And we have to stop expecting women to defy the odds when they're stacked against them.
Yeah, so yeah, I suppose it's just so prevalent that it's almost not seen anymore, because it's just, yeah. So I suppose, Holly, we're joined by a lot of business women here today, and in business and in life, sometimes we come across things, oh God, you know, will I take the risk, or can I take the plunge to do that? What advice would you give them to kind of, you know, if you have an idea and you believe in it, but maybe there might be a member of family who kind of go, oh, you know, maybe don't leave the secure job that you have to pursue your dreams. Like, what would you say to those women?
I suppose, like, the obvious thing is go for it. I mean, why wouldn't you? You know, it's so much easier, I think, as well, to get up and go to work and put all of your energy and effort into something that you feel passionately about. I think everyone's probably been in a job that they're not passionate about. It makes it very difficult to work, very difficult to advance in your career when it's something you're not engaged or interested in. It's always good to follow that ambition. You know, it makes it just so much easier and more enjoyable. And yeah, you know, I suppose I grew up so lucky to have a mum who's always been kind of a self-employed. She was a dairy farmer when I was young, so, you know, that's kind of self-employment. But when dairy became unsustainable for small farms, she took a big risk, I suppose, in terms of going into a very niche business, into vegetable seed production. And yeah, I suppose I've just always seen that as such a positive thing that happened. You know, she was so passionate about it, so into it. The business went really well. That I would just always see that as the obvious thing to do. But I mean, yeah, just like, I suppose, like anyone would say, I don't have more advice probably than these women would be able to give people as the women who've set up the businesses, except that I would say, like anything, go for it.
Yeah. And like, I suppose, just talking about findings and statistics, it's been shown that for a job, women will only apply for it if they feel they have 80% of the criteria outlined, whereas a male will apply for it if he might just have 20% of the criteria outlined. How do we kind of, I suppose, support the next generation, or even ourselves, to kind of, it's coming back to just go for it and not to be afraid?
Yeah, because I think that figure you just gave there, I think there's a corresponding one, which is how much women have to outperform their male counterparts to receive the same reward in terms of pay, promotion, and all of those things. So, like, yeah, it's to continuously go for it. But I also think that we have a responsibility to the next generation, to really try as much as possible to take that out of it, that there shouldn't be this huge inequality in terms of employment opportunities and promotion and rising up in different jobs. And that needs to change at a policy level. You know, I know we kind of touched on gender quotas earlier, and I know that they're controversial and people always say, oh no, people should get in on merit. The reality is, like you said, we're expected to outperform our male counterparts. So it's not about merit. It's about a blatant structural inequality that can be changed. And I think we should be really pushing for that for the next generation to see that, to vote for policies that would introduce things like state provided childcare, to really, you know, allow the next generation to have more equal opportunities than perhaps we've all had. But absolutely, that, like, you know, we see all of these women on the Zoom call who've, you know, persevered and are business owners and, you know, really innovative businesses, and it's often so difficult in areas outside of urban centrals to make businesses work, to just, you know, with amazing role models like that. And yeah.
I can just see some Veronica on the chat there said that empowering women starts at preschool. It starts in the home, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think we need to teach both genders from a young age about equality and the importance of it, not just in terms of the social benefits of that, but also, like I said, in terms of seeing financial institutions being less likely to go bankrupt. I mean, that benefits society on the whole. Female participation is just so important, so far-reaching in terms of its positive impacts, that we really can't underestimate it in terms of having you know, functioning society, you know, functioning institutions like financial ones especially. So yeah, I think, you know, it has to start from a very young age, and I think that comes across, you know, something to touch on is maybe perhaps not relevant to business, but the amount of sexual assault and abuse that we see perpetuated against women in Ireland is quite staggering. It's quite high in a European context. That is also the kind of thing that we need to be teaching boys and girls in school from a very young age, and the absence of that makes it kind of a hostile society sometimes for women.
I'm just looking at some questions coming in there, Holly. I suppose one question that might be of interest as well to the ladies joining us today. What do you think of the current supports for business owners, and what could the government be doing more of to help, especially, I suppose, small and medium-sized businesses at this time? What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, the most difficult year for businesses probably in the history, you know, being closed for so long. I think one of the things that would just be so welcome at this point, because everyone acknowledges, all business owners acknowledge we're in the middle of a global pandemic, is a bit more certainty, I think, is something that would be really helpful. So, for example, we see supports like the EWSS and the, you know, exemption of rates, but certainty in terms of how long they will go on for, a reduction in VAT, all very welcome. But if, you know, society opens up, for example, in the summer, and I think it's a strange one that we're not basing this on a particular number. It's the same strategy we've had along, that there's a worry, and an understandable one amongst businesses, that then perhaps we have to close again. You know, that's happened a few times now. So with the absence of a new strategy, there's a fear that that will happen. So it's very difficult for business to obviously forecast or to plan, but perhaps one reassurance that I think would be helpful and necessary would be, you know, reassurance from government that, for example, the VAT rate will remain at 99% for example till 2025. The exemption in rates will be extended until example 2023. The EWSS will be, you know, continued 6 months or a year post the reopening, because we know that businesses are going to struggle so much to recover from being closed for so long, from the opening and closing nature, that I think, you know, the best thing that could support people at this point is some level of certainty, some ability to forecast, to plan, and to allow businesses to recover with extended support.
Thanks, Holly. There's a question there from Sharon, a statement and a question. A huge thank you to Holly for that remarkable speech in the Dáil on the mother and baby homes. It was so emotional to see a woman representing us on this, and so inspirational. How was it received in the Dáil? Thank you. And that's from Sharon Huggard, the style coach.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, like in relation to the mother and baby homes issue, it's something I feel incredibly passionately about. we talk about women's rights issues in Ireland, it is the biggest women's rights issue in the country. I think Ireland incarcerated more women per population than any other country in the world. And we're obviously talking about the worst human rights violations imaginable. You know, incarceration, enforced disappearance, children sold abroad for cash, for religious orders, just the most unbelievable stuff. And there's still a reluctance from the state to actually right as much as possible the wrongs of, you know, the state and the religious orders working together. So the way that perhaps my approach to this in the Dáil has been received is with a lot of hostility. I don't think the government particularly like being called out on this. And I think, yeah, like, for example, I remember asking the minister in October when there was the kind of public disquiet over the so-called sealing of the archives, would he take amendments? And for example, said no and sat down. Like that day in the Dáil, pretty much nobody would speak to me. So, you know, I suppose it's not received that well from a lot of people up here. But, you know, I think what we've seen for decades now is a lot of people, and something that always frustrates me in Irish politics is people staying quiet, because I find to a certain extent understandable, they don't want to cause offence. We all know people who are really good Christians, and I do too, and we have respect for them and respect for, you know, people in that sense. But when we stay quiet, I think, in order to not cause offence, we offend the many thousands of people who have suffered immeasurably at the hands of this state and religious orders, and it absolutely needs to be called out. It absolutely needs to be addressed, and I don't believe we can move on as a society until we do what we can to put this right, and that has yet to happen. So it's something I will continue to work on, but the reception in the Dáil is not always very nice.
And difficult to kind of come to terms with that as a new TD as well, because, you know, and on that then, Holly, and if anyone wants to ask questions to Holly, please put them in the Q&A box there. What in the past, you know, since you got in as TD, what would you say has made you feel really empowered, or what would you be most proud of?
I'm sorry, the Dáil bells are ringing now, or the Shannon bells, so I'm sorry about the noise interruption. I'm in the office in Leinster House. I suppose one thing that's been really nice to be able to do is just, you know, represent people who aren't often as represented. And it's not something that I planned, but for the most part, that has been women's voices. So, you know, for example, when we saw, you know, when we saw restrictions being reviewed and revised and often eased, you know, coming out of other lockdowns, something I was learning, because I always learn as I go along, I'm not politically experienced, was that, you know, the effect of lobby groups, how effective that is. And then the realization that a lot of people who were being most affected by the pandemic and the restrictions were not represented by a lobby group. And most of those groups were women. So for example, throughout the entire pandemic, even when you could go to a wedding with, you know, over 50 people, when you could go to the pub, when you could do everything, women were still going through childbirth on their own. So, you know, that's hard enough when things go well, but even harder when things don't go well, you know, and for both parents. But to see the reality of that, because there is no lobby group for people who have just given birth, who are just about to give birth. They're not, you know, the reality is the underrepresentation is so stark that I'm proud to be able to represent women's voices who I think haven't often been heard enough. And I always had a real frustration with Irish politics that I felt like people were always saying, you know, what perhaps they thought the electorate wanted to hear, rather than maybe what needs to be said, you know, for example, like that in relation to the mother and baby homes. So it's a real privilege and honour to be able to say the things that I wish somebody had said, you know, when I was an onlooker.
Well, Holly, you're proud to be that voice, and we're proud to have you as our voice for Cork City and County women. So thank you very much, and thanks so much for joining us this morning, Holly.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Take care. So next up this morning, that was a really great chat, and thank you so much again, Holly, for joining us. We're going to have a little short video from Sonia DC, owner of Pestle and Mortar. So Greg, if you can share the video, that'd be great.
I think what makes Pestle and Mortar stand out from its competitors is that I believed that skincare was complicated, and I wanted to create a range of skincare products that were simple, easy to use, effective and affordable. And drawing from my heritage, I come from 6 generations of medicine men, and natural healing has been in my family for over 100 years. So I used this knowledge to formulate all of the pestle and mortar products, which are all formulated with ingredients from nature combined with science. So we do believe to make the products effective, we're using scientific proven ingredients. I think the best single piece of advice that I ever received was to do something every day that scares me. I think that you're not going to achieve anything if you're always working within your comfort zone. And this piece of advice was given to me by my dad. The past 12 months have challenged myself and our business immensely. Within the first month of lockdown, we decided to focus on a project of launching a new website because we knew that retail was closed all around Ireland and the rest of the world. So we put our heads together, put a project in place to launch a new website within 6 months, and we achieved that. And we also did let our retail partners and customers know that we were still here if they needed any advice, and we will be here after the lockdown to serve them. The biggest lesson I have learned this past year is patience and resilience. You have to be able to think quickly and think on your feet and be open to change and adapt. And I've learned that as a business leader, I'm capable of doing that, and also I'm lucky that I have the team that could help us also do that. We managed to launch a new website, we launched 2 new products in the pandemic and quite successfully, and we also managed to engage with our customers through social media and on our website. I suppose my morning ritual or routine helps me focus on my tasks for the day. So when I get up, I don't turn on my phone first thing. I make sure that the kids are ready for their schoolwork for the day, and then my mind is at ease and I come into work and start my day. There have been many proud moments, but one that really sticks out for me is when we appeared on QVC, America's largest shopping channel, and we sold out within 7 minutes. And only 1% of new brands that appear on QVC in America sell out, so that was an absolutely phenomenal achievement. We received support from our local enterprise office, Leo Kildare. We received employment support, and it was really beneficial. Also in the Kildare local office, I dealt with Jackie and her team there, and they were really helpful, really positive about our business and our business ideas. So she always gave me a good push. I would probably quote the night slogan, "Just do it." That is exactly what I am like, and especially with pestle and mortar. When I set up the brand, I didn't seek anybody's opinion or feedback, and that is because a lot of the time, if people aren't as passionate about your ideas as you are going to be about it, so they don't understand if you are unbelievably passionate and you believe in your idea, you will certainly make it succeed. So just do it.
Just do it. And as Sonia said, you know, she had Jackie in her local enterprise office. For the ladies here this morning, you have Joan, you have Deirdre, you have Christine, you have Kevin, and they're all always there for support, guidance and advice. So next up this morning, we have Diane Carton. She has one of those stories that if you read about in a newspaper or a magazine, that you would think that's just amazing because it's so unique. Diane's business, Sally Baskets, she crafts and creates these absolutely beautiful, you'll see them up behind her shortly, willow baskets from scratch. They're absolutely stunning. She also does handbags, so definitely check out her website after this. It's Sally Baskets, Saille. Good morning, Diane. You're very welcome. I'm gonna, just unmute yourself.
Right, I've unmuted. Good
Diane,
morning. How are
you're
you?
very welcome. I'm going to let you take over, Diane, and just give us a little bit of background, because I suppose you are based in Lyre in Bantier. So give us a little bit of background about the business. How did you come to basketry?
How I came to basketry. I've always been kind of hands-on, always doing stuff, crafty stuff, even since I was a child, making and doing stuff. Basketry was kind of rooted in environmental, because I was doing permaculture and learning all about systems and farming, energy cycling, and the environment and climate change. And during that course, learning about the permaculture, we did a day's workshop with a basketry. So a guy came in, Norbert Platz, who's an amazing basket maker, and had willow rods for us. And we were attempting to make a very large basket on the grass in the front of the college. I just got addicted. I loved it. And the more I've heard about willow, how it grows, what it does for the environment, producing your own materials and then producing a basket from that, and all of the strategies towards going from the growth through to the process to the making, I just loved it. The history in Ireland is so rich with basketry too. So it ticked all my boxes anyway, with I can sit down in the kitchen making a bit of a mess, producing something. And for many years, as I was practicing and grabbing stuff out of the hedgerows, because I didn't have my own willow growing at the time, I was nicking bits off the hedgerows and roses and anything that I could bend or turn, just to keep practicing. And all my friends got baskets for Christmas and their birthdays, and oh, look, another basket, surprise. and actually looking at some of those now, I'm horrified and embarrassed at how bad I was. But it ticked the boxes for me. I needed something that was calming, meditative, hands-on. I could get the material and very few tools, and it's just sitting and relaxing. And like I suppose a crossword or a Sudoku, when you start a basket, you have to finish it. You can't leave it and come back a few days later. The willow's dried out and it will crack and break. So when you sit, you commit and you just weave. And sometimes you've really no idea what it's going to be when you start until it's actually started growing. And then you decide, oh, it's a log basket, it's a shopping basket, it's a, I have a bit more skill now. I can dedicate and decide what it's going to be. But at the time I didn't.
You certainly didn't come to it overnight. And your background was in plumbing. Is that?
Yeah, I was a full-time qualified plumber for 25 years.
Okay, and you were living in the UK and you moved to Lyre. You were saying that you were living in Ireland for a little while. You toured around and looked for really nice places to live, and you thought maybe Cork or Kerry was where you wanted to settle down.
Yeah, I came over kind of newly qualified. I'd just done my apprenticeship in plumbing. Like I said, I was hands-on. I was always the kind of girl that, what do you want for Christmas? I'd seen a nice screwdriver or something, and that was what I wanted for Christmas. So I came over with the skills and wanted to get that little dream cottage on an acre or so, and have a few vegetables, maybe a few chickens, all that. And so when I first came over, we rented for quite a while, and I was trying to find a work, plumbing, and it was difficult enough as women, unfortunately. There's not many of us in the construction industry. I think the majority of people were kind of looking at me like I had two heads. Would I get on with the lads and that kind of stuff? And so that took a little while, but once it started, it flew then, absolutely. But I never met another woman plumber, unfortunately. And as Holly was saying, and Pauline before, women have to be not equal to men, but 150% better than them to always be proving yourself. And certainly I found that in the plumbing. When I went out to job with my toolbox, if a guy was there with the toolbox, they never questioned his ability, but my ability was questioned every single time and continued to be for 25 years. So it is hard for us to, but I suppose it gave me confidence, it gave me the, I can do it.
And as you were saying, like growing up, you were the one, you know, for a screwdriver. Did your parents encourage that within you then, Diane?
No, I had a little brother, and my father was an engineer and always kind of had the cars in pieces on the driveway. He fixed everything himself. He was very hands-on, and he had a shed in the back garden that him and my brother would sit inside, and they'd be soldering and making and doing stuff. And being a girl, I wasn't allowed in. I'd look in through the window. So probably gave me that kind of obstinance to I can get in. I can do it too, just to prove.
And then at what point did you kind of decide, okay, I might just park plumbing for a while and I will pursue basketry and see if I can make a living from that? What brought you to that decision?
I've been doing the basketry for over 15 years. So I'd sit and make baskets and kind of fill the shed up. And then we'll have to find, you know, friends of, you can only give so many of them away. They've had enough now. Thank you very much. So I would go out and try a craft fair and just put the table out and put the baskets out on the table and sit and make while I was there. It was important to me that people saw the craft actually in action and saw that the baskets that were here were ones that I had made. I hadn't imported them. I hadn't brought them in. And for children and for older generations, actually, the amount of stories, wonderful stories. My grandfather used to make baskets, and oh, I remember this basket I used to have, and the history and the connection that people actually have with basketry. It's still very much in the blood here. And of course, that helped to sell the baskets. So hopefully I would get rid of as many as I could, and then I could go home and sit and make more. I didn't really put any pressure on myself. It was kind of just a hobby. And then actually I got asked a lot more for more of them and spending more time developing different designs, going from the more traditional Irish stuff into more contemporary styles. And they kind of people seem to be inspired by them. They liked them, they wanted them. So I think my body was kind of telling me the plumbing was coming to an end. You know, the knees, the back, the bones, and being tired of having to prove constantly that I was good enough. I suppose the challenge of it, I kind of knew how heating systems worked now. I was out troubleshooting stuff, and sure, I could wake up in the night and go, oh, I know what's wrong with that heating system. I know what that is. The challenge was kind of gone now. I'd done it, been there. I felt it was time to just give it a go and jump into it full time. I produced the first tote handbag and then went into the Leo in Mallow to see them there, to ask for a mentor and show them the bag and say, hey, does anyone like this? Do you think this is a sellable thing, you know? And I met Niamh, who was my mentor for that day, and she just absolutely was blown away by them, thought they were utterly beautiful, and said, why are you not doing this? You need to do this. And said, you need to go to Showcase. I'd never even heard of Showcase. When I looked at it, I went, oh my God, how the hell am I going to do this? And from there, it just flew.
And sometimes that's all you need, Diane, is for an outsider to tell you that what you're doing is beautiful and it's worthwhile and there is a market there. And, you know,
it is that imposter thing. It is that imposter thing. I'm quite happy tootling away, doing my own thing, and people saying, yeah, that's nice, that's nice, that's nice. But I needed somebody who I had some merit that knew what they were talking about to actually say, no, that's a sellable item. You could do something with that. You know, that's really amazing. And that's what kind of inspired the confidence, I suppose, you know.
And you were saying as well when we spoke last week, Diane, that often you go to craft fairs and you would be making the baskets, and some days you would go home with more baskets in the van than what you arrived with, and you call those your why days.
Why? So, why am I doing this?
So how do you get over those why days? And look, we all have them where we kind of doubt ourselves, kind of go, God, you know, should I be doing something else, or is this worth it? What gave you the drive, I suppose, to keep going on those days that you came home with more baskets in the van than what you went with?
That's simple. That's other people's reactions. That's the, oh my God, bless your hands. Oh my, your stuff is so lovely. I remember saying to my friend, I think I need a box, like a little suggestion box with the lovely box. Every time someone says lovely, they have to put 50 cents into the box, because that'll give me the petrol money to go home. But everybody loved watching me making it. That's, I think, what the difference was. I could see that people were really attracted to this, really inspired by it, really loved to watch it and see it. The love of basketry is definitely here and alive and well in Ireland. Sometimes people just haven't the money. You can't eat a basket. People were coming out to vintage rallies and fairs. They're paying 15 euros each to get in. There's a family of 5 of them. Then they get a bag of chips and they go off and buy a little plastic thing for the kids. And, you know, they've blown 100 quid. And that's it. That was their day out. They don't have the surplus cash, maybe, to actually buy. And that's okay. But they had a great day out and I had great chats with them. So you go home on those Y days and you just get the baskets out and put them away in the shed and say, do you know, I really enjoyed that day, regardless.
Yeah,
do you know?
it's a great outlook to have. But I suppose, like, from when you started making the baskets, people, I suppose, what people look to invest in, we're more interested today more than ever before, I think, of the story behind a brand, or the story of, you know, that basket that you have in the hallway, or the handbag. People love to kind of explain, you know, who made it and where it came from and the story behind it. And I think people are more willing to invest in that today. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Quite often I'd be starting a basket and, you know, a basket's slow work. I could be at a show for 5 or 6 hours and made 1 or 2 baskets. And someone comes along and sees it starting off and then comes back an hour later and then sees the walls are growing up slowly. And then they come back and then they can see that it's much higher. And then they'll come back again just to see the border going down and watch them finish the whole, they want to see the whole process. And then very often I'm buying that one. I said, well, it's still wet. It's not dry yet. You'll have to dry it out yourself at home. That's fine. I watched that one. I watched that one being born. That's the one I want to take home. And that's lovely.
It's a story. And Diane, before COVID hit, you were ready to go into shops. And how did you manage going from, you know, really building the business to then kind of going back and saying, now I need to look at website? What supports did you get from the local enterprise office, Diane?
Well, going to Showcase was the first kind of biggest thing. Being able to get a stall with the local enterprise, which gives you the 50% off of the cost of it. And the mentoring, building the brand, marketing, or learning all of that stuff. I was completely foreign alien to that. I'd had no idea of any of that. The Start Your Own Business course is a full week-long course. That was really intensive, very good, but wow, did it cover so much stuff. It really gives you the foundation you need, or even gives you at least the idea of what questions you have to ask and what you have to learn, you know, which way to go from there. Yeah, they've been fundamental in giving me the confidence and the direction to actually make it into a business. I mean, the first year that I leave plumbing and step full-time into my business was the year that we landed with COVID 3 months later. And I'd come out to Showcase with lots of shops and big orders. It was kind of like, oh, wow. And the shop's closed. And you may have to wait. Can you wait with the order for a little while? And it's kind of, it was such a great start, only to have oh no, what am I going to do now? So I went to social media and said, well, okay, what can we do? We can go shopping once a week. That's about as much as we can do. So I started doing shopping baskets. Now, I've done shopping baskets for years, but I started to do a full range of shopping baskets, not available to the shops, directly to my customers. So social media, drumming up business and saying, we can't do much, but we can go shopping. And they flew, absolutely flew. My own customers and those who were following me on social media supported me in that time until the shop started to open again. And I could continue then with the orders. Bless them.
Somebody has asked on the Q&A, Phoebe has asked, does Diane have an Instagram account for her business? I would love to follow her and I love her passion. So maybe when you're finished, Diane, you can pop all your social media links into the chat button.
Yep,
So
I'm still learning that too. Sally Baskets.
Sally Baskets. Last question for you, Diane. Advice for others who might feel like giving up.
Don't give up. Don't give up. If you love what you're doing, just keep fighting and keep going forward. And yeah, we kind of have to as women, we can morph into different things, can't we? We can find a way of tweaking something and changing it very slightly. And sometimes that's what we need to do. Like with me doing the shopping baskets, and there was me thinking, oh, I'm just going to be supplying shops. That's what I'm going to do from here on in. I can sit here, no more craft fairs, sit here and make. But actually that wasn't going to be the reality at all. And neither should you put all your eggs in one basket. So it is kind of finding that balance and saying, okay, what will work for today and what will work for tomorrow, and just keep chopping and changing, and you'll find the balance. And once you have the balance, that's where I think just keep going. If you love it, don't stop. Just keep doing it.
Brilliant, Diane. Diane, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So Greg, I'm going to, next up we have female founder videos. So these are local ladies that we might know from our communities, with little snippets of business and life advice. Roll it.
My name is Enrica Moore and I'm co-founder of Viscous Systems. Viscous Systems is an engineering company specializing in machine vision applications, robotics and software development. The best business advice I have been given is that you cannot do everything by yourself, so it's important to get the right team around you and learn how to delegate.
Hello there, my name's Chloe. I'm the co-founder of Two Green Shoots. We create gardens, feasts and escapes that nourish people and places. We're based in Glengarriff, West Cork, where we have a showcase edible garden that's open to the public as part of the West Cork Garden Trail. We offer garden design services specialising in edible, wildlife-friendly gardens, and we offer a range of beautiful botanical-themed accommodation within the grounds. For more information, visit twogreenshoots.com, and I just want to leave you with my top tip in business is move beyond treading lightly to treading positively. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day.
My name is Audrey Cantillon. I am a visual artist based here in Kinsale. I'm standing in front of one of my designs, which is a 12-foot by 21-foot print in the centre of Kinsale. One of the greatest pieces of advice that I think I ever got was from Sonia Lennon of Lennon Courtney here at one of these Leo events. And she said to me, give yourself the advice that you would give to one of your best friends and then listen to it. And actually, I think that was really solid advice. So that's the advice that I shared with you.
Hello all, I'm Claire Graham, owner of the Old Mill Stores in West Cork and the web shop, theoldmillstores.ie, where we sell unusual homeware and lifestyle gifts. Now, my pearl of wisdom for you today is to trust your gut instincts. Everyone you meet has an if I were you view, and mostly, I have to say, they're not even in business. So stick to your guns, you know your business best, and if you believe you can make it work, chances are it will thrive. Good luck, and hopefully the future is female.
Some really good, solid advice there. And we're really lucky to have such great women, local women, and today is about supporting their businesses. Now, just see Greg is after putting up a poll here with multiple choice answers. So the question is, what were your biggest challenges in business in the past 12 months? So we might just answer them. And we'll move on to our next speaker then. Lack of time to do it all seems to be a big one. Fear of the unknown, lack of time to do it all. I'll share those results. So next up this morning, we have Dr. Paula Gaynor, owner of Somiga Natural Foods Health Supplements. Now, I should probably personally thank Paula for getting me through the last few months of homeschooling and working from home. I think without your products, at the end of the day, I wouldn't have been left standing. So thank you very much.
No problem. You're very welcome, Christine.
So Paula, today you formulate probably the most effective and I suppose purest natural health supplements that you can possibly buy on the market. But if you want to take us back a little bit before you came to Samiga, Paula, what was your background?
And so my background is in nutrition. I suppose it all started when I was a young teenager and my parents gave me this book, Handbook for Girls. And I think they wanted me to learn about boys and clothes, but I had very little interest. But it was the chapter on nutrition that totally sparked it for me. Like I just found it profound that, you know, what you eat has such an influence on not just how you look, but how you feel, whether you're energetic or you feel sluggish or a little bit depressed. It was just the fact that different nutrients can have such an effect on us. So I suppose came to going to, and I knew I wanted to study nutrition. There was, you know, no doubt about that. It was my passion. So I studied nutrition in UCC for 4 years. And then at the end of that, I went on to do a PhD in food science. Because basically I kind of wanted to diversify kind of my career prospects and job prospects a little.
And at that stage, you went on and did a PhD after that, Paula.
Yeah, so I did a PhD for 4 years then in UCC as well in food science. And I loved it, but very, very fast at the end of it, I knew like working in a lab is fine, but definitely not for me. You know, I think I needed a lot more variety. I found kind of lab work for me was mundane and I totally needed social interaction. Like, yeah, so a lab wasn't doing it for me at all. And I suppose kind of the unfortunate thing at the PhD then, kind of at the time in Ireland, jobs were few and far between, and the nutrition jobs would have been based in food companies and they would have been lab based. So, you know, job prospects were here for me weren't great. But fortunately, look, I was dying to travel anyway. And so myself and my partner, who also is a food scientist, the two of us headed off to the States in search of the American dream.
And it was a while before you found a job there, and you worked for some really interesting interesting businesses, Paula. So if you want to maybe tell us about that.
Yeah, like it definitely took us a while for me to find a job there. And I suppose the first 5 or 6 months, the challenge was trying to find a proper job. And I suppose like the companies there, they knew about Ireland, but you know, having a PhD from UCC didn't really mean a whole lot. Like, you know, they were trying to look for Ivy League graduates as opposed to somebody from, you know, a small island in Europe. And you know, I think if it was Trinity, it probably would have rang a bell, but UCC really didn't have, you know, they wouldn't have been aware of it. So yeah, it took a while. The challenge was definitely harder to get a job there being unknown. But I did land the job eventually, and it was with a food supplement company. It was a really fast-growing company and very well regarded and well respected. And the job itself was great. But I suppose from day one, I realized that this is a temporary job. You know, I went into the office and my boss, who's a brilliant scientist and a brilliant businessman, he called me in, and I suppose I naively thought, oh, I'm getting the welcome to the company. And instead I got a coffee cup thrust at me and said, coffee and 2 sugars. So yeah, I thought, okay, well, you know, this job isn't going to be my American dream job. And I suppose, look, you know, I suppose I compromised in that I realized, look, I need to build contacts here. I need to get some experience here. We had a wedding to pay for in Ireland. So yeah, so I stayed it for a year. But I suppose in terms of inequality, I mean, I think I had inequality to the extreme in a way, in that, like, for example, Mark, my husband, used to come and we'd meet for lunch. So he'd come over to the office. We didn't have much money, so we had 1 car at the time, and he'd come and collect me. And one day the boss called him in to his office and shut the door and told him that, look, I'm very happy with Paula's work output, so I'm giving her a raise. So that was, I found out I was getting a raise through my husband. And actually, I kind of gave him a hard time afterwards, saying you should have negotiated a better raise for me, in fairness to you. But yeah, so look, I stayed at it for a year and 3 months. And look, apart from, I suppose, that side of things, look, he was obviously very patriarchal, but he was a really good businessman and he was a really good scientist, and I could learn a lot while I was there. So I took that opportunity to do that.
So you took the rise and you stayed there for a little while, regardless of who was told you got the rise. So sometimes you just, and you moved on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you moved on, and you did find that dream job in the States after that.
I did, yeah. I suppose a year and 3 or 4 months later, I did find totally my dream job. So it was with a Swiss pharmaceutical company, and they had their US headquarters in New Jersey, and they were manufacturers of dietary supplements. So for them, I was kind of head of their business development for their nutritional ingredients. So there was so much variety again, like I was dealing with regulatory people like in the FDA, I was dealing with customers, and I was doing a lot of travel to universities to organize their research programs. So there was a whole lot of variety, which to me I loved. It was great, and there was lots of travel as well, both in the US and in Europe as well.
Yeah. And like when we were chatting last week, Paula, you were saying that I suppose when you decided to start having a family, things changed and maybe the progression kind of halted a little bit for a while.
Yeah, I suppose that was kind of the first kink in the chain for me. Like I had worked full-time there for 5 years, and then so when I was pregnant with my first child, and we, the maternity leave, look, it's notoriously short in the US. Like the maternity leave is 6 weeks, and so I asked for to have another 6 weeks maternity leave, and it was very begrudgingly granted, but look, it was granted. But like the company's policies for working moms, and especially for part-time working moms, it just wasn't there. Like there was no flexibility, there was no support structure, and like up working for 3.5 days a week, but I lost my health benefits, and so like I moved on to Mark's health insurance, which was okay, but for a woman to lose health benefits in the US, it's a big deal. Like you can't live in the US without health insurance.
Yeah.
And like they stopped contributing to my pension because they took away the company car, which look, they're all small things, but it was definitely, I felt it was discrimination. And when I did bring it up, like I was told, well, this applies for part-time workers, whether you're a man or a woman, which I suppose you couldn't really argue with, but there was no part-time men there, and men didn't really need to work part-time, whereas obviously moms a lot of the time want to work part-time. And I suppose that was kind of discrimination on an extrinsic level, but there was also kind of the soft discrimination. I suppose, look, when I went part-time, I definitely felt like they felt you were less committed to the role. So you were kind of, your opinions didn't matter as much anymore. You were kind of left out of meetings. And I was certainly passed over for promotions that I certainly would have been, well qualified for. And it was.
And that's the thing, like that is the challenge, when if you do have kids and you go part-time, as you said, before, you just become less visible, and you're just not seen as much then to be thought about for promotions. So fast forward then, I suppose one way to take control of all of that is to set up your own business. So tell us how that came about.
So I suppose in 2006 or 7, we moved back to Ireland. And at that point, I decided, look, I'll stay home for a couple of years and take care of the smallies. And so Mark had a job. Sorry, excuse me. Mark was working for a very good food and nutrition company as well, but he was traveling a lot. So he was probably down 3 out of 4 weeks every month. And I suppose we realized, look, after a couple of years of me staying at home and a couple of years of him doing that, I was anxious to get back to work, and he was kind of anxious to get off the road. And I suppose we'd always kind of dreamed of running our own business. And we saw that there was a great opening for a food supplement business or health supplement brand in Ireland that's based on good science and nutrition, but also the supplements that actually taste good. Like there's lots of supplements out there, and we knew we're against lots of competition, but lots of those supplements stay in the back of a cupboard, and they're not, they're left there, they're never consumed, and they're the most expensive supplements. And if you're not going to take them, you've just wasted your money. So we wanted to come up with something that, as I said, was good nutrition, good science, but tasted good and something that people would actually enjoy. You know, not just feel the health benefits of, but actually enjoy taking them.
So it
I
started
suppose,
with, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, what really sparked it for us was my three children, and I suppose as a nutritionist, I was completely horrified that they wouldn't eat fish. And oh God, like even when we were growing up, my granddad was actually a fisherman, and like all the time, my mother would say, "Well, we're very bright because we ate our fish when we were small." And you know, it's an old wives' tale, but there's a lot of truth in it. And yeah, so my three kids anyway totally refused to eat fish, and I headed off into the health store in Bandon or to various pharmacies, and you know, no matter what supplements I came home with, you know, whether it was oil or capsules or tablets, they refused. They were like, no, it tastes disgusting. And actually, in fairness, the only ones they would take were gummies, like they were omega-3 gummies, but like when you look at the label, they are completely loaded with sugar. And so it was just like giving them sweets. Like there's like a sprinkle of omega-3 and lots of sugar. So of course they would take those. And so we ended up, I think, basically we had contacts in the US, and I had kind of a good background in terms of emulsions and what kind of products we could produce that would kind of mask the flavor of the fish oil. So we came up with our first product, and actually I have it here, this little one. So it's called Easy Omega-3, and basically we called it Easy because it's easy to take. So it's a peach and mango flavor. It's like really creamy, smoothie texture, and there is no fish taste from it. So
no, there isn't. I can testify to that there is no fish taste. And I suppose starting out then and having come back from the States and maybe not knowing where to turn to for support, how did you come across the local enterprise office, and what kind of supports did you avail of, Paula?
Oh, like the local enterprise office were brilliant to us from day one. You know, I suppose Christine, we worked with Christine to get the trading online voucher, and actually twice now we've availed the trading online voucher, so we were able to get our website up and running. And through the local enterprise office, we also attended the Food Academy program, which gave us really good grounding into like how food business is starting up, you know, in all kinds of aspects, like from marketing to financial, you know, accounting, all things that we weren't prepared for. So it gave us really good broad and outline about running a business. And we've also, you know, we've received feasibility grant and a priming grant, and I suppose, you know, apart from the financial supports, it's the mentoring supports that have been absolutely, you know, invaluable for us. And you know, whether it's a business support or mentor or a PR mentor, like it's been so useful in guiding our business through the first or second year of business, really.
And in the face of everything over the past 12 months, you've launched new products and you've grown the business, which is just amazing. So, like, I suppose you definitely probably had to take maybe a change of path to what you kind of envisioned without COVID. So how did that work for you, Paula?
Yeah, so like, I suppose when COVID struck, we were kind of 9 months into having launched our first product. And at that point, like, we built a business plan kind of, you know, going through the health food stores as our channel, basically, to establish the brand. And we did have a website, but we had no sales. We hadn't focused on the website at all. We focused on kind of building through the health food stores. And what happened, obviously, with COVID, then the health food stores shut down, and some of them stayed, you know, closed temporarily, and others kind of left 1 or 2 people in at a time. So people weren't browsing, you know, so that if you had a new product, they weren't coming across it in there. And so basically, look, our sales just, you know, March and April last year, they basically plummeted. But so I suppose it's through the mentor then that the local enterprise office put us in touch with. Like he looked at our business plan with us, and he said, if you want to stay viable, and you really need to focus on online sales, and you need to kind of build your social media presence as well.
Yeah, and that has really helped the business. And yeah, so instead of going, you know, it's the direct consumer route and telling your story yourself.
Yeah, and on top of that, I suppose the thing was, Christine, like, he advised us very much as well about, you know, expanding our product range and doing that much faster than we had anticipated. You know, we obviously had planned to do it, but look, we had to get into it a lot faster than we have.
Are we having technical difficulties with Paula? I think maybe a little bit. You're back again. But Paula, it comes back to what Diane was saying. You know, people buy into, or they like to know the story of the brand or what they're buying. And we all know, you know, there's so many supplements on the market, but at the end of the day, and I suppose going direct to consumer and with your social media and website, it's a great opportunity and a platform for any business owner to tell the story and to tell the expertise and the knowledge behind that business, and you know, to show that there is real life people, real experts behind the business, and it's not just marketing, which is really important as well, and which you do so well.
Absolutely. And I suppose, like, for us, look, you know, obviously, as I said, there's a lot of health supplement brands out there, but being based in Ireland and being, you know, able to be in direct contact with the consumers, it's huge. Like, we get so many, you know, maybe Instagram messages or emails or Facebook messages, you know, and it can be just about nutrition in general. It's not always related to our products, but we're there, we can give advice. You know, we can tell them about our products and what ones suit them and what ones wouldn't work for them. You know, so I think consumers appreciate having access, you know, to not just the brand, but to the people behind it, and to their, you know, to be able to tap into their knowledge is huge.
Yeah, it comes back to that personal story. And I know on your website, Paula, you had said on ghostomega.com that you're happy to do 15% discount for participants today with the code. What was the code?
Yeah, so the code is women15. Yeah.
So you can put that. You can put that into the chat, and because I see in the chat a few people were saying that they were interested in trying out the product. So
it's good.
Paula, thanks so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Christina. Thank you.
So next we'll have some more female founder videos of local business women giving us their advice.
My name is Norma Kelly and I own Praline Pastry and Chocolate Shop in Mitchelstown. We are a handmade chocolate and pastry business. I suppose the best piece of advice I could give to anyone starting out is be kind to yourself, because remember, Rome wasn't built in a day.
I'm Nuala Carey and I own the award-winning Glengara Pharmacy here in West Cork, as well as being a mum to 5 children under 8 years. Last year, with the help of the local enterprise office, we developed a brand new website that delivers nationwide. It's packed with all the great health and beauty products you and your family need. We're delighted to be able to offer you an exclusive discount with the code LEO15 for 15% across our entire site. You can find us at glenpharmacy.ie and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at glenpharmacy. The one piece of advice that I was given when starting out my business was always be prepared to work hard, but always ask for help when you need it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Philippa Farley and I run Pro Privacy Consulting Limited, a specialist data protection, privacy and cybersecurity consultancy. The piece of advice I have for you is that you can do, or you know something that can help somebody else.
Hi, I'm Sue of Sue Gifford Design. I'm an artist, designer, and I create bespoke pieces of hand-painted furniture and design interior and exterior spaces for a huge variety of clients. Business advice: think big and do it your way.
Great advice there again from local business women. And again, asking for help is just so important. And as Sue said, think big. Our next panelist this morning, Greg just has put up another poll with the question: is there specific training supports you need from the local enterprise office for your business? So if we could just maybe start answering these, that'd be great for a couple of seconds. Women in Business Programme, website related training. Great, thank you very much for that. So next up is our final lady this morning, and it's Barbara O'Sullivan of Shoes. Now, last week I was in a bit of a mood and I knew I had to I had to make a phone call to Barbara to have a chat with her. And I said, I'll go on to Barbara's website first. And it gave me a lift because her shoes are just amazing. They're beautiful and they make you think of better times where we'll all be able to go out soon and wear our gorgeous heels again. But also she does beautiful trainers, as you can see up there behind her in a minute. So for every occasion, Barbara has the perfect footwear for you. So good morning, Barbara, great to see you.
Hi, Christine, good morning, everyone.
So Barbara, your background wasn't really in retail. Do you want to maybe just give us a little bit of background of how you came to retail, really, Barbara?
My goodness, it's a long story, Christine. We could be here forever, but I'll give you the shortened version of it. So basically, I come from a corporate background. I worked for Johnson & Johnson as a planner buyer before I started my own business. And I suppose, like every other woman out there, Christine, I found the work-life balance a struggle. At the time before I left, my son was 7. So I had to start my job at 7 o'clock in the morning and I had at least an hour's drive before I got there. So I was usually leaving home around 10 to 6 every morning to travel to Ringaskiddy. And I used to have to ring him in the morning to say good morning. And, you know, I just found it a struggle in the end. So I had just finished my master's degree to do with my job in supply chain management. And I decided to take some parental leave and just to take time out and have a little think about where I was going and spend some time with my son. And I'm sure every woman out there knows that, you know, that mom guilt that you have, that you're not spending that time with your child. It's something that none of us can really, you know, push aside. So we went to France I had been thinking about it for a while, starting my own business. So I went to France on holiday with my husband and I thought, give him a glass or 2 of wine now and I'll just tell him my idea. So one night he had maybe 3 glasses of wine and I kind of spilled it out there to him. And I said, look, I'd like to start my own business and spend more time at home in Mallow, that I can be close, you know. And he just basically said, look, you're going to do it anyway, whether I want you to do it or not. So from that moment on, then I engaged with the local enterprise office. And I was still working for Johnson & Johnson's on parental leave, and I'd done the Start Your Own Business course with them. So I think that was great for me because that bedded down that I kind of, what I was thinking about, I had covered it all, you know. So it was a great tick box exercise and I learned a huge amount on that. So I went back to Johnson & Johnson in for 3 months and I handed in my notice, but in all that time I spent setting up the shop, Christine, while I was out on parental leave. But if there's one bit of advice I'd give to anyone is don't tell anyone what you're doing because they kind of can talk you out of it, you know, and if you have an idea in your head, you can be talked out of it. So it was just me and my husband, not even my 7-year-old son knew it all that time. I didn't tell my brothers, my sisters, nobody. And basically when it was all set up, that's when I kind of said what I was doing.
And how did it come to be shoes? Could it have been clothes? Could it have been something else, Barbara? Why or how did you, it was a gap in the market that you saw locally, wasn't it?
It was really. Now we do have a lot of shoe shops in Mallow, but I wanted to go down that more designer route for that customer, you know, the yummy mummy, the glamorous granny, that's who I wanted to target. And I just felt there was a gap in the market there for that nice, affordable designer range. So I think in my parental leave, you know, I spent a lot of time sitting across the road here on the church seat, looking to see how many people passed, how many women passed within the hour, were they pushing buggies, weren't they pushing buggies, who was my customer, you know? So there was a gap in the market and I decided to fill that. Now, saying that, I am a bit of a gambler, Christine, but I kind of thought, I calculate this gamble. And you know, I kind of looked into the brands that were available and that I could get. And I actually had product bought for the shop before I even had a premises, you know, which is probably a big gamble to make. But look, that's the way I had to do it. It was the only way to do it, to actually have product in my shop for when I wanted to open.
You have form in that, Barbara, though. You were saying that, you know, even with the website, as soon as COVID hit, you were straight on it. You knew that it wasn't a time to stand still. You had to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely, Christine. And I know people won't kind of, maybe it won't dawn on them, but when you're in retail, your product has a sell by date. So, you know, I had summer stock in my shop and I had no way to get it out there. So when after the first 3 weeks were announced, or the second 3 weeks were announced, I decided I seriously, I needed to get a website up and going. The local enterprise office were offering a grant, and it was really quick in getting it through and everything, but the queue for a web developer was it was too long for me, Christine. So what I decided to do was not apply for the Leo grant for that time and just do the website on my own. So me and a friend actually created the website on our own. Now, saying that, Christine, it was like a swan on the water, you know, it was standing on matchsticks, basically. But nobody would have known that, you know. It was hard work because everything was manual, but while the website was going, then I applied for my Leo grant to get the website done properly. So I had the website up and running and just kind of flowing away.
Great. You had something to keep you going and get you out there until, you know, you had kind of better back-end service or a web designer to come on board.
It was so important for me, Christine, to get the product out and not to have to queue for a web developer. So that's why I did that, you know, but there was no, you know, now I have my Leo grant now, which is fantastic. So I'm going to have a nice website that looks great, but also that functions great for me, because currently everything is done manually and it's very difficult to work.
And Barbara, you come across to me like as a train. Once you get an idea, that's it. You're going to keep going. Where did you get that kind of work ethic from, or where, you know?
You know what, Christine, and I know this is the International Women's Day, but I come from a long line of strong women, and you know, I think that was very important. Now, I don't have a daughter, I have one son, but it's so vitally important for me to teach him about strong women and where he has come from. And when even I done my master's degree, first it was for me. Secondly, it was to show my son that women can do this. And I took him out of school when I finished it. He was only in baby infants, and I took him up to UCC and I stood him on the grounds of UCC so he could see what women can do. And that's vitally important to me, that he grows up to see what strong women can do. And thirdly, it was my job, you know, it was going to, you know, but then I'm a bit of a gambler, as I told you. I think I was probably had my master's degree for 9 months when I left the job I was in. So I think that my husband was like, "Oh, why are you leaving now? You've just got your master's." And you know, it's because I suppose if you're passionate about something, it's just nice to, you know, take on the challenge. I love a challenge, and that's exactly what I did.
And was there a turning point? Were you always like that, Barbara, or was there a turning point in your life where you kind of go, you know what, life is short, I'm going to pursue what I want to do, and regardless, I'm going to go for it?
Yeah, I suppose I was always, as I said, a bit of a gambler, and I would take things on, but I'd always be a calculated risk taker. But I suppose back 11 years ago gone now, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So I had moved back to Cork to be with her, and I was working in Johnson & Johnson at the time. And you know, she'd always wanted a diet home. So we as a family, my two sisters and myself, moved in to care for her towards the end and nurse her towards the end. And on Valentine's Day on 2010, house burned down. And like, we were in it, which was very frightening at the time. But to watch, you know, to try and get my mother out of the house, thank God it was the middle of the day. If it was nighttime, I don't know what I'd be here. And we got her out of the house, thank God, because she was bedbound at that stage. She was in her last few days of her life. And I just looked at the house burning and went, no matter what you can plan for, Christine, it can be taken just like that. We just wanted her to die at home, and that did not happen. So I remember looking at the house and thinking, you know, everything can change. No matter what you can plan, it can change in a second. And that's what happened for us. In 1 second, it changed, you know. And Mammy passed away 8 days later. Thank God in my sister's house, she didn't have to go to hospital or anything. The ambulance were very good in that way, in the fire brigade, that they were able to take her down to my sister's house, and she died peacefully there, surrounded by all of us. But I think I always go back to that day and think, you need to get moving. You know, life is there to take. It's not there to just breeze through, you know. So I do make decisions fast, Christine, because of that.
And you said as well that your mum used to always say to you, Barbara, what's the worst that could happen? So you
exactly, and that's my greatest motto in life. What's the worst that can happen? So everything I do in life, I sit down and I work out what's the worst that can happen, because Mammy always said that. Work out what's the worst that can happen to you and go from there. And I remember sitting down and doing that exercise when I wanted to leave Johnson & Johnson and start my own business. And I said to my husband, the worst that can happen is I won't have a new car for the next 7 years, and I can get a job. I can get a job if this doesn't succeed. But I think what people, for me, I'm not afraid to fail either, Christine. And I think that's a great thing in life. If you're not afraid to fail, you won't be afraid to take on the challenge. Don't be afraid to fail. And that's something I teach my child all the time. Failure is nothing. And I watch him living that life now. He is not afraid to fail. He doesn't care if he fails. He just gets up and gets on with things again. And that's a huge achievement for me, to watch me pass that on from generation to generation.
Yeah, it's a great lesson, Barbara. Barbara, there's a question here in from Helen. She wants to know about how small businesses dealing with burnout and the challenges in the beginning with being it all and not maybe being able to afford or hire a marketing team. How do you deal with that challenge of, I suppose, as a business owner, having to be it all and do it all?
I think if you take it bit by bit, you can't do everything all at once. You can only do your best. Do your best, be true to yourself. And I think if you, like, I'm doing everything for the last year. So the girls have gone home on COVID training, but I'm working hard. But if you enjoy what you're doing, you don't mind doing that. So I do my marketing at 11 o'clock at night. I could be in bed, I could be sitting on the chair. So just, I think what we have to do now is just embrace what's happening to us. And take the challenge from it. And I think it's a great chance for us to invigorate our business. And if we can do that, that will invigorate ourselves. And I find that every achievement I have with the business currently, and the struggles that we have, everyone's struggling with time. But if you have to do something at 11 o'clock at night, like I do, and you think, God, that's great, now I got that done. It's invigorating yourself. You feel that's a great achievement. And I think that's the greatest gift we can give each other now at the minute, to push our businesses on.
Yeah, and it's celebrating the small wins as well that we have along the way.
Celebrating the small wins. And I would say to everyone as well, you know, don't be afraid of change, because things can change. Like I said, for us, it changed 11 years ago and we weren't planning that change. Try not plan too far ahead. I did... and if you do, not that don't plan ahead, do, but if it changes, don't take it that it's a bad thing, you know. I completed the Women in Business course with the local enterprise office, and I had this huge strategy planned out. I had a name change planned out. I had marketing strategy planned out. I had, you know, beautiful branding, and COVID hit. And, you know, I knew from that moment that I had to stop what I was doing. And I remember doing a little, I suppose, a little piece on the News at 1. And a woman put an order in on my website, and I rang her because I was unsure that the size that she'd ordered would fit her, because they were a brand that was kind of in between sizes. So I rang her, and she said to me, she said, I heard you on the News at 1. And I thought, what a very positive lady. I need to go down and buy something from her website now. And she said, I remembered your name, Shoes, SHOOZ. She said, by the time I got back to the office, I still remembered it. And everything I had planned to change the name of my shop went straight out the door. It wasn't going to happen there. If it was on News at 1, I had to roll with it. So don't be afraid to go back to your original, or to move ahead in a different role, to, you know. That's the greatest gift we had, is just, I suppose, being able to adapt quickly as well. So I immediately put to bed the idea of changing my name. So it's Shoes now, and my branding is going to be Shoes going forward.
And the website is shoes, SHOOZ.ie. And again, you have a promo code for participants this morning. It's at IWD21, is that correct?
It's IWD 2021, and it's a 20% promo code across my website, just to cheer every woman today. The sun is shining. Take whatever you can positively from today, and enjoy the weekend.
Brilliant. Barbara, thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
So we're going to have our last videos from female founders this morning. So have a look at them, Greg. Thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Anna from Anna Gronica Photography. I'm a Clonakilty-based photographer specializing in commercial portrait and weddings. My advice to you, the one that I would give, is trust your instinct. I wish you all a happy International Women's Day.
My name is Kathy Fitzgibbon and my brand is the Culinary Celt. I'm a culinary content curator, a marketing expert and a writer in the area of food. The best business advice that I've been given is to always trust your gut and to be authentic and true to yourself and your business.
Good morning everybody, my name is Kata and my business is called Cotton Caterpillars. I'm making organic children's clothes and accessories and also have an eco range of reusable makeup pads and accessories.
Anne here from Anne Harrington Rees Designs. My colourful designs are printed and made here in Ireland. My advice is to adopt the pace of nature. Her secret is patience.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Kevin, I'm going to hand the screen over to you in a second, for our official closing. So Kevin Curran, a lot of you probably know, is Head of Enterprise for the local enterprise office, Cork North and West. So I'm going to hand the screen over to Kevin in a second. We'll just do this one quick poll here and it's all yours, Kevin. How much time do you give for you time during the week? That is for relaxation and exercise. Let's see, 2 to 5 hours. I'm glad to see that nobody's saying no time. That's good, at least. And 2 to 5 hours. Might be able to up it a little bit. Kevin, screen is yours.
Thanks very much, Christine. And look, it's great to be here. I think I've several rather hard acts to follow after that there. And honestly, there was some really interesting things said, and I hope that every one of you is going to get at least 1 or 2 nuggets out of it. But maybe just very briefly, just to go, I suppose, at the outset to thank the speakers, but just a few things that resonated with me as I was sitting listening there. We Sharon Corcoran opening it, and she said something there, advising you all just to take it easy on yourselves. And I think that's quite important, maybe, because we all tend to cut a stick maybe to beat ourselves sometimes. And a bit of advice I was given many years ago by somebody that I thought was quite wise was, he said to me that the most important day in his life was the day that he realized that he couldn't actually do everything. So maybe just think about that for a second. We can't do it all, but we do strive to do our best. Holly, I have to say, there was some really interesting nuggets there, and I think some great, I suppose, challenges maybe that women do still face in not just in politics, but in life broader as well too. And certainly even just watching the chat function there as it was going while Holly was speaking, I think she hit a button, or maybe hit several buttons with you all. And I suppose at the end of the day, we need to talk about these things in order to maybe affect some changes and make some different things happening. She mentioned as well, and a couple of more of the speakers mentioned as well too, imposter syndrome. Yeah, it is a fact. And unfortunately, it's still there for many women in particular, but it's a thing that more and more women, I think, are dealing with and putting behind them, so fair play. We had a little video interlude then from Sonia, and what a story. And just a little anecdote. Sonia mentioned that she's gotten a bit of help from our colleagues in the local enterprise office in Kildare, and in particular, my colleague Jackie there. Jackie and I were interviewed for our jobs on the same day by the same board, and we started at the same time, so I have a little connection there. But it doesn't surprise me that Sonia would be very happy with what's coming out of there, and it's a great success story. Diane, brilliant basket making, but I just have this image of the two-headed plumber that you used there, and I'm sorry, Diane, but I won't be able to get it out of my head for a while. But certainly with many of our speakers today, that sort of segue sometime in their life from one type of career into the other, but chasing the dream as well too. And, you know, I think that's it's amazing to see. I think what she talked as well too, and maybe it's coming from the imposter syndrome thing, is that how she needed some sort of affirmation that what she was doing was actually really pretty good. And what she was doing in the products she was making were things actually that, yeah, people will give you money for those, Diane. You need to be selling them rather than just giving them away as presents. So that affirmation, I think, you know, we all need it in our own way, but maybe some more than others. And I think she talked about how when she walked in and met one of our mentors and said, yeah, I really like that, Diane, and you need to be selling them, that maybe was the confidence boost that she needed. And there was an image there at the end as well too, where she talked about, you know, being at a show and making a basket, how somebody might look at, you know, the basket being started, come back later and see the progress being made as the wall's made up, and come back a bit later again then when the basket was finally finished and said, yeah, I want to buy that one. And a thing actually that I watched during lockdown were the old Hands series that were made by David Knocksmith, was it, or David Blake Smith, who passed away recently, and all those old Irish crafts and just the art of making and the joy that sometimes you get in just watching something being made as well too. So it kind of hit home a little bit personally. Paula, again, I suppose I'm familiar enough with the business, familiar with the products, but maybe part of your story was something that I was only hearing for the first time, and something I suppose that hit me just from my own family was the difficulties faced by people, and particularly women, because it's disproportionately them, in going back to work part-time, maybe after taking a little bit of time out, you know, for family, and how perhaps that there is discrimination. Maybe some of it is overt, some of it is maybe accidental, but it's discrimination nonetheless against people who are working part-time and maybe being locked out of those conversations, or, you know what, I'm not working Mondays and that tends to be the day that X happens or Y happens or Z happens, and those particular challenges. Barbara, yeah, I mean, you talked about how if you let it, people can talk yourself out of things. Just having that determination maybe to say, yeah, I know this, I got this, and I'm going to do it. Coming from a line of strong women, I could hear my late mother talking there. I could hear my two grandmothers talking as well too. So I get where you're going. And I think it's very important as well too, that you're giving your son that understanding as well too, that it's a tradition that he should be proud of as well too, as you're passing it on to him. I really like the image of you sitting on the bench in front of the church, looking across and doing your market research. Ladies, will you take something from that? Find your gap, identify your gap. And one of the best ways you can do it, and actually it's something that I love doing myself, is people watching. Just watching how people go about their business, what they're doing, what they're not doing, what they like, what they don't like, whatever. It's probably the most effective and definitely the cheapest way that you can do any market research as well. So, I mean, that certainly hit home with me. And, you know, you talked as well, you know, about, you know, what happens to a plan, you know, when something goes wrong. I think it was Colin Powell, who was involved in Desert Storm, the Gulf War, who talked about no battle plan surviving the first 15 minutes of actual battle or actual engagement, you know, when the bullet starts flying. It's not the plan itself that's the most important thing. It's actually the act of planning. And it's just equipping you maybe with some of the tools, or maybe just even having those internal arguments and debates with yourself about what might I do about this and what might I do about that. But yeah, at the end of the day, things will go wrong. A plan shouldn't be a set of handcuffs. It just should be a set of guide for you. But it's still important to get out there and actually do it and engage in that process and do it. And yeah, you're right. Embrace what's happening as well too. There's an awful lot of what's happening at the moment that none of us here today can do anything about. And maybe sometimes what you got to do is, when you find yourself on top of a bucking bronco, is just hold on as best you can and hope that he'll quieten down at some stage and let you get off. With some contributions then from a number of local businesses, and just to name check and just to thank them for participating. So we had Chloe and Kata and Kathy and Anne and Sue and Norma and Philippa and Claire and Nuala and Enrica and Audrey and Anna. Thank you all, ladies, for just, I suppose, being here, but also just giving us a little tip or a little nugget maybe that somebody else might pick up on somewhere. My own team today who helped put this together, honestly, and I've said this at things before, I get the easy thing, I get to ride in at the end, and you know, that's that. But look, I've got a great team with me through Sheila and Sylvia and Barbara, Cahill and Deirdre, but especially Joan Kelleher and Christine, who's here on the panel today. I couldn't make this happen on my own. And in fairness, I just tip my hat to all of them because they pulled this out of the fire year on year, International Women's Day after International Women's Day. Look, it's been a very different Enterprise Week for us this year. It's been a very different International Women's Day for us this year. This time 12 months ago, we were in the Celtic Ross. It was a nice day. There were lots of people around. There was lots of chatter around. We actually were able to have some real food that other people cooked and meet people for the chat and the sidebar and things after. But you know what? We'll be back. Night follows day. And the light at the end of the tunnel at the moment is not another train coming at us. It is actually a genuine light of hope, I think, that's coming at us. Thank you to Greg. The success of Greg's job today was going to be whether we saw him or heard him. We didn't need to see him. We didn't need to hear him. So Greg, I tip my hat to you. Very successfully run, and thank you again. Keeping things running smoothly as well, but in the front of the house, and you can see her, was Christine Duggan. Look, Christine, you've been an excellent MC this morning, and equally as well, you pulled out an awful lot of stops in the background over the last while as well to make sure that this happened. Finally, to thank all of the people who've actually dialed in and come into this morning. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of it as well. And again, forgive me if I look to my left, but I had the chat running there alongside. It's obvious with the level of interaction that's there, and it's obvious with the level of questioning, etc., that was there, that, you know, you got it, you enjoyed it, and I thank you again for that. And maybe just in one of the speakers, or maybe just in one of the things that was said, there may be some nugget, there may be some story that maybe resonated with you, there may be something that just piqued you a little bit that maybe you can use or something after. Now, before I leave, I am going to ask for a favor, and I'm going to ask for something back, because there's no such thing as a free lunch, although I know you didn't get any lunch today. But look, at the moment, the local enterprise office, and we're part of the local authority structure, but our parent body, Cork County Council, is currently undertaking a little exercise looking at the talent that's in this county. And there's a lot of talent in this virtual room today. What they're trying to do is kind of a talent mapping exercise. What we're going to do is, after this, we're going to send you a link, and we're going to ask you just to take 2 minutes. It's about sharing a few details. There's nothing overly personal or anything like that there, but it's just about gathering, I suppose, the picture of Cork and the story of Cork in terms of its talent and in terms of the skills that are out there. And what we're hoping to use this for is to aggregate this information together and use it to inform policy decisions going forward. And that could range from maybe where particular industries it might suit them to set up because there's a particular hotspot of a particular type of talent in this area, or it may well be what we in the Leo use maybe to inform where and what sort of programs we run in places. So look, I'll send you a link to it later. It's completely confidential, etc., but take 2 minutes. And when you have taken 2 minutes, can I ask you to do one further favor for me? Ask your significant other or ask a friend to do the same thing as well. Right, that's the end of the ask. So a big thank you again to one and all. And I'm going to leave you with one thought. All of our speakers talked about maybe various challenges, etc., that they faced and how they come around them. So I want to leave you with the words of Eleanor Roosevelt. A woman is like a tea bag. You can't tell how strong she is until you put her into hot water. And I'll leave you there. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you very much, and very true.